The observation deck of the wandering star was silent except for the hum of life support systems and the occasional creak of metal expanding in the void. Sarah had come here to escape the noise of the cargo bay, where the rest of the crew argued over supply ratios and fuel calculations. She needed quiet. She needed to think. Instead, she found Kivik. The young Vrelian sat cross-legged before the viewport, staring not at the stars beyond but at his own reflection in the reinforced glass. His fur, a mottled gray-brown that would darken with age, was still soft with youth. His ears, too large for his narrow skull, twitched occasionally as if listening to sounds only he could hear. But his eyes, those amber eyes common to his species, were fixed on himself with an intensity that made Sarah pause in the doorway. She'd been traveling with the Vrelian pod for 3 months now, ever since their ship had rescued her escape vessel from the wreckage of the mining station on Telos 7. The Vrelians were a proud warrior culture, their history written in conquest and glory. Every adult she'd met carried themselves with the assured confidence of predators who had never questioned their place in the universe. Kivik was different. He was still learning what it meant to be Vrelian. Sarah approached slowly, her footsteps deliberately audible on the deck plating. The cub's ears swiveled toward her, but he didn't turn his head. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. Kivik's shoulders tensed, then relaxed. "It is a shared space," he said, his voice carrying the formal cadence his people used when uncertain. "You do not require permission." Sarah smiled despite herself. She'd learned that Vrelian young were trained in protocols before they were trained in combat. Manners before murder, as one of the elders had joked. She settled down beside him, close enough to be companionable but far enough to respect his space. For a long moment they sat in silence. Sarah looked out at the stars, at the endless expanse that had become her home since Earth fell. She wondered, not for the first time, if anyone else from her world still lived. If anyone else still remembered what grass smelled like after rain, or how coffee tasted bitter and perfect on cold mornings. "Why do you look at your reflection?" Sarah finally asked. Kivik's ears flattened against his skull. "I am examining." "Examining what?" The cub's claws flexed, scraping slightly against the deck. "Whether I look like them." "Like a warrior." Sarah turned to study him properly. Kivik was small by Vrelian standards, his frame lean where it should have been broadening with muscle. His muzzle was still rounded with youth, lacking the scarring that marked veteran fighters. She'd seen how the other cubs sparred, vicious even in play, and how Kivik always ended up on the bottom of the pile, pinned and panting. "Do you think you do?" she asked gently. "Look like a warrior?" Kivik's reflection stared back at him from the viewport. Beyond it, a nebula burned in shades of purple and gold, but he didn't seem to notice its beauty. "No," he whispered. "I look weak." The word hung between them like a confession. Among Vrelians, weakness was the greatest shame. Their entire culture was built on strength, on the ability to face any threat without flinching. To admit weakness was to question one's right to exist. Sarah had learned this the hard way. She'd watched Vrelian cubs barely old enough to walk practice with blunted blades. She'd seen elders with missing limbs still training, refusing to accept their limitations. Strength was everything. But Sarah had also seen what strength looked like in other forms. "Can I tell you something about humans?" she asked. Kivik's ears pricked forward, curiosity overcoming his melancholy. "Yes. We were never the strongest species on our planet," Sarah began. She kept her voice low, conversational, as if sharing a secret. "There were creatures that could tear us apart with ease. Predators that were faster, stronger, had better senses. By every measure your people used to define a warrior, we should have been prey. But you survived," Kivik said, a statement rather than a question. "We thrived," Sarah corrected. "Do you know how?" The cub shook his head. "We learned to see strength in unexpected places." Sarah gestured at Kivik's reflection. "We learned that the body is just one kind of weapon. The mind is another. The heart is another still." Kivik frowned, confused. "I do not understand." "Look at your reflection again," Sarah instructed. "Really look. What do you see?" The cub obeyed, his amber eyes scanning his own image with fresh attention. "I see small shoulders," he said slowly. "Soft fur. Weak limbs. Look deeper." Kivik stared. His reflection stared back, backlit by the cosmic fire beyond. "I see." He paused, struggling. "I see someone who is afraid." "Yes," Sarah said. And do you know what it takes to sit here knowing you're afraid and still face your reflection? That's not weakness, Kivik, that's courage. The cub turned to look at her fully for the first time. The others would laugh at such words. The others have never had to question themselves, Sarah replied. They were born into certainty. You're being forged in doubt, and that makes you dangerous in ways they'll never understand. How can doubt make me dangerous? Sarah smiled, remembering her own journey from the ruins of Earth to this ship full of alien warriors. Because doubt teaches you to think, to adapt, to find solutions that others miss because they're too busy relying on brute force. She reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and placed a hand on his shoulder. On Earth we had a saying, "It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog." Kivik tilted his head, processing the strange idiom. It means, Sarah continued, that courage and determination matter more than physical strength. I've seen you in the training bay, Kivik. You get knocked down more than the others, but you always get back up. That's not weakness. That's the most important kind of strength there is. The cub looked back at his reflection. Sarah watched as something shifted in his expression. Not confidence, not yet, but perhaps the seed of it. The others say I will never be a warrior, Kivik said quietly. The others are wrong. Sarah's voice was firm. You want to know what I see when I look at you? Kivik met her eyes, vulnerable in a way that his culture discouraged. I see someone brave enough to face their fears, someone smart enough to question themselves, someone strong enough to keep trying even when it hurts. Sarah squeezed his shoulder gently. You look brave to me, Kivik, not in spite of your doubts, but because of them. For a long moment the cub said nothing. Then so quietly she almost missed it. Thank you. They sat together as the wandering star sailed through the cosmos, a human and a Vrelian cub, both refugees in their own way. Outside, the universe burned with ancient light. Inside, something small and precious was kindled. The understanding that bravery wore many faces, and strength came in forms that couldn't be measured in claw or fang. Kivik would face many battles in his life. He would be knocked down countless times more. But on this night, in this quiet observation deck, a human had taught him something his own people couldn't, that the warrior who knows fear and fights anyway is the most dangerous warrior of all. And when he looked at his reflection now, he saw not what he lacked but what he was becoming.